Okay, welcome again. Believe it or not, we're already in chapter 4 of this monitoring and evaluation made easy. Yes, it has to be easy. There's no other way. And today we are going to continue on the same line of thinking that we've been in the past, like say, 2 chapters before. Today we're going to talk a bit more about data because we were talking about, what's an indicator. And so, of course, you need to collect the data in order to report on the indicator. So I'm not going to spend more than I need, but at least some key principles and definitions. Okay, we know that we use the word data, but strictly speaking, data is the plural of datum. So datum is the singular. Okay, if you have one piece, then it's a datum, and if you have several, then you have data. But I mean, you'll see more and more that people mix, and sometimes data is singular or is used as in singular way. I don't mind. So far it's consistent. If you're writing something that you use one way or the other. Okay. So you have a word cloud there, and then it tells you a number of things that are all related, so even date, so apparently it derived from people using those first lines in a letter, and so that's why in the end it became the date in which you were writing something. Anyway, so you have a lot of things. It's a factor. For some reason, it says it also originated as a given. It's a given. So whatever you are providing, it's a given. Okay, so either it's a fact and it's a feature, and an element or an item. So you'll see all those concepts and keywords that are related to data. Okay. So usually numerical, of course, some people say, you can have also qualitative data and such, but most importantly, this then brings on us those two main types of data, qualitative and quantitative. As we all know, qualitative describes and qualifies and tells more, and even an anecdotal or full description of things, whereas quantitative, as its name already implies, is you're counting. So you are just, going after how many do you have of something. And so let's focus on the quantitative now for now. And as you know, we typically divide that in either, it's discrete, or so nominal, as we are also called categorical. So if a person is of a certain gender, religion, are you talking about a house or an apartment? So you have discrete type of data, but you can still count how many of this versus how many of that. Of course, the other one that we use most is those that are called continuous. So continuous quantitative, right, type of data. And that's, again, mostly subdivided into something that is interval, right? So where you have like equal space in between, 1 and a 2, the difference is just 1 unit. The 2 and a 3, it's a 1 unit. Whereas when you talk about ordinal is something that is mostly ranked. So you have something that is first, something that is second, third, fourth, but sometimes the difference between the first and the second is not 1 unit. It could be that between first and second, there's 1 unit, but between second and third, there could be 3 or 4 units, but it's just made it into the second and the third. So it's very important that the spacing between the two numbers is not the same in ordinal as it is in interval. A typical example is what we're using more and more in social sciences, which is, for example, the Likert scales. Before it used to be, well, I like it or I don't like it. Now we're even asking, okay, can you tell me how strongly do you like something from 1 to 5 or from 1 to 10? And so you can have a way of organizing that thought and to say, well, I really strongly dislike this. Well, more or less, I don't, I dislike some, but, and then you can go from the highest to the lowest. Okay, so that's something that we use interestingly. The interval, of course, is one where, okay, that equals spacing. So everything else that you know in terms of temperature, age, or, many indicators are just, of that interval category. Okay, so let's talk a bit more about how we formulate, especially those quantitative that quantitative data, especially for indicators. So let's now realize that there's a few definitions. Of course, you can use a whole number, or you can use what I call the rates, right? And the rates are typically per. So you want to know, okay, is this per 100 people? Is this per 1,000 people? Nowadays with COVID-19, of course, we talk a lot about, what's the rate, per, say, 100,000 or per 1,000. And so that's very important. The most important when you talk about rates is that the numerator is just a subset of the denominator. Okay, so the denominator is there, and from the denominator you have your numerator, and that's why it's a subset. Okay, and then you have something slightly different, which is a ratio, and where the numerator has nothing to do with the denominator. For example, the sex or the gender ratio. So male / over women. So what's the ratio? Are they relatively more? Are they 1 to 1? Are they 2 to 1, etc.? So you can even fraction it, etc. Okay, that's very important. Now the next key concept here is what we use a lot. When we have a spread of numbers, that we have collected, we always go for an average. We always go for something called a central tendency. So what's all this telling us in summary? And there is where you have heard, sure, lots of you are saying, okay, yeah, I know all about this. The means, the medians, and the modes, right? Very important that, we just quickly review that. So obviously the mean is the more frequently used is what we usually term, the average. And it's just, of course, what you do is you sum up all the different components, and then you divide it by the total number of observations, just to have a sense of where is it, and of all this that I've seen, where is it in as a summary. The median, of course, with the median, you have to order. You have to put from the lowest to the highest value, and then of course is the one that it's in midway. It's after ordering, it's midway. It's also called the 50th percentile or percentile. And when you want to know what's there in the middle, especially when you have a sense that maybe 1 or 2 values in one extreme could be too far out, and if that's going to affect, say the mean, as we know it will affect, but we want to know, well, what's like in the middle of all these values, then you use the median. And of course the mode is a slight different there, a slight way of seeing things, which is the one that repeats itself most. Okay, so you have whole numbers. If you have absolute whole numbers, do we have more? And so it gives you an idea of what's the repetition factor here, okay? Now, important thing, when you want to know your data, use the 3 types, okay? Use the mean, use the median, use the mode, so you have a sense of what is telling me, what the data are telling me, okay? Okay, then we're not gonna cover, but very important to start, no, we're not covered today, but we're going to start thinking about when you could have, 10, a series of, 10 values here, but you could have a series of 100 values, and you do the mean, the mode, and, and the median. How close are they related? How similar are they versus how spread out they are? And that's where we're going to go into variability, the range, the variance, but that's not for today. Something also important that we're going to cover at some point is that what happens if you wanted to collect and you couldn't, and so it's 0, 0. So that's called the missing values. Do we need the missing values in some aspects or not? So we're going to talk about that as well. Okay, but because all this is theoretical, then we need an example. And so I'm going to tell you about this anecdote, years ago when I started teaching statistics applied to population, family planning, demography in Exeter in United Kingdom. What happened is that in an inauguration day, we all went to play Skittles. As you may or not know, Skittles is like bowling, what we know bowling pins, where you have 3 rounds, throwing this ball, and then on 9 pins that have been put there. And so you can have, of course, a maximum of 27 when you complete your 3 rounds, okay? We're going to give you, and so you have this example where the teachers played against the students. And what happened there was we have this table, and you have this, now this, say, we just, for simplicity, we just did, like 10 rounds. So you have the total of 154 for teachers and 157 for students. Wow, so who won? Really? 157 the students. But if you look at 1, 2, 3, the first rounds, there's always been more. The teachers were doing better. The teachers were doing more. They threw and they fell more pins than the students. But what happened? If you look carefully, then you will see, there were at the very end, especially, there were some students who, I don't know, they were very experienced or they were stronger or whatever, and they fell more pins. And that obviously threw some things into their favor, making them, because even the mode, you see, the mode favors the teachers, right? Even the median is favoring the teachers, but the mean at the end favored whom? The students. Okay, so that is a great thing, and we can use it. There's a graph there that we're also adding there, and where you can see that you have this distribution of the scores, and then you can see how, especially at the very end, the the average moved to the right for the students, when at first it didn't seem so. Okay, it seemed that there was more, the teachers were gaining more ground. Okay, so that's important that we know also the distribution. This is also an example of visual ways of presenting data. You can have it in a table, and of course you should have it also in a graph, because some people relate more visually, others love more than actual numbers there. Okay, so this is very important. All right, so we're going to do just quickly the sources of data. So there's always the primary and the secondary sources. The primary are the ones that you collect. Secondary are the ones you did not collect, somebody else collected, but you studied, you analyzed them. 2 main important sources of data, at least for the type of work that I do in public health, and that's like population and community-based data, but also there's like institution and service type data. So what is what, and what's the pros and cons, what each one characterizes for. So the population, the most important is that's where people live. That's where you can, of course, explore many things. There's household surveys, there is income surveys, there's agricultural surveys, but all based on the household. There's water and sanitation. There's all that you can ask when it's family-based or population-based, okay? That's very important. And there, as you can imagine, if you have what we call a representative number, you can have the full total, which is the census. But in many cases, we know we have what is called a sample, okay? And we're going to cover in another chapter, we have a survey which has a sample. Now, that sample has to be what? Yes, it has to be representative. Why? Because if you want to say, okay, this subset of the total, right, this percentage of the entire population is representing the whole population, it has to have that feature of being representative. That we're going to cover more and more of that representativeness. Okay, a long word. And then of course you have the second source, which is okay. No, I want to find out what happens in this institution, or I want to know what happens in this type of service provided to the population. It could be private, it could be public, it could be different types of health or education service, or it could be even marketing, etc. The most important is you can have those types of sources as well. Okay. There's several ways of capturing the data, as we know. There's again the very quantitative, the number of people who do that, or who respond to this, or who know this, or who have this type of skill, or who have bought this or have not bought this, etc. But also this is a chance where you can abound, you can expand, and you can ask what is called the qualitative aspects, right? Remember, you can describe, why did you do this? Why did you buy or not buy this product? Why did you access this service and did not access this service, right? What about things like satisfaction, things like the quality maybe wasn't that great. And of course, the sources are very different when you are in a sense as you are collecting that enumerator, or that interviewer is collecting. And in the institutions, your primary source of data is often the registers, right? The records that are there already, okay? Another source of data is, of course, the medium nowadays with the phone and online. We can do lots of sources of data, asking people over the phone, over internet. Sometimes we can use satellite images, to collect data for us, okay? And then, just to finish this part, and I have a table where we kind of summarize. Most importantly is that those population-based data are typically more expensive, and that's why either they are done every 10 years, right, if it's a census, or 5 years if it's one of those periodical surveys, but they're more expensive. But the good thing is that they usually reveal the situation that happens, whereas with services, it's more specific. It's interesting because you want to know about what people do and what the clients access or don't access, and usually lower costs. And thus you can, and remember, if it's based on the services you provide, you have registered, so you can even collect it every week, every month, every quarter, so more routinely than those larger population based. Okay, so the only not so favorable is that often, or not often, but you can find that the register can have issues of quality. The entries, were they accurate, were they complete, were they timely reported? Because if you have the report that was given, maybe some districts missed the deadline. So very important. And of course, the comparability. If you're going to compare from 2 or 3 different types of registers, are they comparable? So issues like that. Okay, for now, enough, but we're getting ready for doing more and more on that. M&EZ, monitoring and evaluating, an evaluation made easy by understanding every crucial concept. Thanks very much. Okay, subscribe. I hope you like it, and then we'll continue this interesting conversation. Thank you.